Welcome back to Hot Air with me, Joshua Robert. And today we're doing something that honestly feels kind of necessary. Because if you've opened social media, which chances are that you all have, like if you looked at the news, if you checked your phone, accidentally clicked on comments under literally anything, or simply existed on the internet for more than 7 minutes recently, it can start to feel like the world is just one giant dumpster fire that is rolling down a hill. Sometimes the headlines are very heavy, sometimes they're stressful, and sometimes you finish scrolling and suddenly need emotional support and some fucking snacks and probably a cocktail. So, today, we're going to change the energy a little bit because this episode is all about good, gay news. I should really get a jingle for that. We're talking about good gay news, okay? We are taking a trip around the world and highlighting positive news stories happening within the queer community that deserve a little attention and honestly deserve a lot of celebration too. And because we're about to go into Pride Month, so duh. We're going to talk about Poland officially recognizing its first same-sex marriage, 2 gay farmers changing perception in rural America, one vegetable at a time, probably eggplant. Spain creating its first global LGBTQ plus rights envoy, and Alex Consani making history in fashion. We are getting progress, representation, community, visibility, success stories, and proof that while the world can absolutely feel chaotic, and it is, there are still really amazing things that are happening too, things that we don't often focus on. And before we jump in, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at _hotairpod, where you can keep up with clips from the show, behind the scenes content, some tools, little snippets of upcoming episodes, all the chaos in between. And you can also visit hotairwithjoshuarobert.com, where you can shop my merch, submit your listener stories, and send in your topic suggestions. And then you can become a future part of Hot Air on a future episode. I need to do a listener story episode ASAP. So grab your coffee. If it's the AM, grab your wine. If it's afternoon, or if it's Sunday, you can drink wine anytime. Grab your emotional support iced latte. I have mine. And let's remind ourselves that not every headline has to end in stress and anxiety, okay? Let's hit it. Hotair, hot takes therapy, no filter. Say what I mean. Hotair, let's be real. You're listening to Hot Air. And before we get into this, my dog is here today. And it's kind of funny. I'm watching her on the screen and there's like one eye and one ear that is showing. She's very cropped out. But sometimes she's like a noisy little chihuahua, like not a barky one. She just does like some weird, weird noises. So if you hear anything crazy, it's her. I'm not relieving myself. And she might come say hi at some point in the episode. So perhaps she'll make a cameo. But she's just being a little cutie resting over there. All right, so I want to start today's good gay news segment with something that at first sounds like a very small headline, but the more that you sit with it, the more you realize this is actually a huge deal. Poland recently registered its first officially recognized same-sex marriage. And I know that some of you are probably having like the same reaction I had when I saw that at first. I was like, wait, first in 2026? Like, babe, what year are we in right now? Like, if you're thinking that, same, okay? Because I think when you live in certain places, especially cities where pride flags are hanging in store windows year round, we're seeing same-sex couples holding hands is not something that anyone even thinks twice about in certain parts, okay? This is a positive episode. You start to assume that the rest of the world is moving at the same speed everywhere, and you're thinking like, okay, we've figured this out, we're progressing, and then you leave West Hollywood, or you leave Hillcrest, or you leave the Village in New York, and you realize that is not the case. But then stories like this remind you that reality is a little bit more complicated than just everyone being okay with everyone being gay. Poland has had a pretty difficult relationship with LGBTQ rights over the years, okay? There have been years of political tensions, conservative policies, debates around visibility and equality, and there was even international attention surrounding areas that became known as LGBT-free zones, which, first of all, I still need someone to explain to me what that even means. I know what it means, but like explain to me why. Like imagine walking into your neighborhood and seeing a sign that's like, this area is free of iced coffee, personality, and fun. And no glitter, please. Like it's giving weird energy. It's giving someone took the aux cord and played motivational speeches instead of music. But like behind all of that, behind the politics and the headlines and debates, there have also been countless LGBTQ people and activists continuing to push for change, continuing to advocate, continuing to fight for recognition and equal rights in Poland. And here's something that I think that we forget when we hear phrases like marriage equality or legal recognition. Those terms start sounding like paperwork, right? They sound like government language, like you're reading terms and conditions before updating your iPhone. Like you hear it and you go, okay, sure, that's important. Whatever. It kind of like just floats on by. But behind every single one of these headlines are actual people, real couples, real relationships, and real lives. And it's hard for us to do sometimes, but like try to put yourself in these people's shoes. Imagine being with someone for 10 years. Imagine building an entire life together, sharing rent, buying furniture, fighting over whether 72 degrees is comfortable or if one of you apparently enjoys living inside a meat locker. Like imagine adopting a dog together, celebrating birthdays, planning vacations, creating traditions, building memories, even raising children for some queer couples. Imagine doing all of these things every other couple does, and then having your government look at that entire life that you have built and essentially go like, interesting friendship, like legally friendship. And I go, excuse me? Sir, they own matching robes, okay, and share a Costco membership. Like, nobody casually splits custody of a French bulldog named Kevin as friends, okay? Let's be fucking serious for a second. That would be a cute name for a bulldog, Kevin. Adding it to my list of animals to adopt, okay? These things are not just symbolic. Marriage recognition isn't simply about saying, like, cute, like, we approve. It affects real life things that people rely on every single day. Hospital visitation rights, taxes, inheritance, medical decisions, legal protections, family rights, things that most people don't even have to think about because they assume they'll automatically have them one day until suddenly they do not. And I think that's why moments like this matter so much because someone out there, somewhere out there, someone saw this headline and thought, like, maybe one day that's going to be me. Like, maybe someone who's been quietly sitting there thinking, like, this will never happen where I live, suddenly felt this tiny little shift inside themselves. Maybe they felt a little bit of hope, like, oh, this can be a reality. And I love stories like this because progress doesn't always arrive like looking insanely dramatic. I think we imagine social change as this giant movie scene where music starts swelling in the background and people are standing in the rain delivering emotional speeches where like someone screams, "This changes everything." But most of the time, that's not what it looks like. Sometimes progress happens quietly. Sometimes it's paperwork that's just sitting on a desk that needs a signature. Sometimes it's people standing in a government office looking at each other realizing like, "Oh my god, this is actually happening. We're doing this." And there's two ways to look at this here, right? I think those quiet moments can be the most powerful ones because somewhere there are people who genuinely thought they might never see that day come, right? And I do think that younger people sometimes forget how recent so much of LGBTQ progress really is. We talk about certain milestones like they happened centuries ago, like we're discussing like an ancient civilization. Like people are like, back in the olden days, blah, blah, blah. Like, babe, same sex marriage became legal across the United States in 2015. Okay. Like, not that long ago. We were talking blurry brunch photos with Instagram filters and listening to songs that now somehow count as throwbacks. Like, this wasn't ancient history. This was 11 years ago. And on the other side of that, while things sometimes happen quietly, like this news story about Poland recognizing the first same-sex couple, it makes me wonder, why is it so quiet? We should be screaming this from the rooftops. This is another big push for the queer community. And maybe it's intentional that it's a little quiet because it might embolden others around the world, which is a little bit shady. But because we're keeping this episode positive, I'm really trying to avoid going down that thought process. But yeah, I think you know where I'm going with that, right? You all know me well enough by now. But I'm not being a negative Nancy today, okay? Sometimes these things quietly happen. Maybe there wasn't a lot of pushback in Poland. Maybe it just took a hot second. I don't know. But hopefully this inspires somebody somewhere and gives them that little bit of hope that this too will happen in their country. So let's scream it. Let's shout it from the rooftops. Let's share it on the gram and send this to whoever you need to make sure more people know that this amazing milestone is happening. And like I said, globally, many countries are still having these conversations and figuring out these rights for the queer community. Progress, we know it doesn't move in a straight line. Like, I wish it was just that no pun intended, but I wish it did move in a straight line. Like from point A to point B, we're good. I wish progress was like placing an Amazon order where you could just click a button, track it in real time, and it winds up on your doorstep the same day. But it is not. Sometimes it moves forward, sometimes it moves backwards, sometimes it moves sideways and trips all over its own feet. It's a lot. But stories like this are important because they remind us that progress still moves. It's still moving. Even when it feels slow, even when it feels frustrating, even when it feels like the world is constantly throwing chaos at us, because bad news spreads fast, fear spreads fast, anger spreads fast. Open social media for like 6 seconds, and suddenly you are convinced society is collapsing and everyone is fighting and everything is on fire. And there is actually a lot of stuff that's on fire this week, and it does feel like society is collapsing. But this story shows up and reminds me, reminds us that somewhere there are people celebrating today, right? Somewhere there are couples that are hugging, that are crying and calling their parents and opening champagne. And I'm going to get emotional. I haven't got emotional on the pod in a really long time. Somewhere there are people saying, like, we fucking did it. And I fucking love that. I love being reminded that love keeps winning these small battles that aren't so small, they're huge battles, but battles, because sometimes that's all progress really is, right? Is these small but medium but large victories stacked on top of each other until one day you look back and you realize you climbed an entire mountain without even noticing. So, to everyone in Poland that is celebrating, to everyone who spent years fighting for change, and to everyone who thought they might never see a moment when this happens, this fucking episode is for you. Also, I would just like to acknowledge Brenda from the government office who was like processing paperwork and accidentally became part of queer history. Like, Brenda girl, welcome to the movement. We appreciate your service. Thanks for signing off and stamping stamping approved for Poland. Now, our next gay story is coming over here to rural, I always have a hard time saying rural America, two gay farmers who are changing minds in rural America. So we're leaving government buildings and marriage paperwork behind, and we are going to rural America, where apparently the gays are now farming, which honestly I feel like that's a television show, right? Like, I would absolutely binge watch that. Somebody needs to call Netflix immediately because I need the real gay farmers of rural America. Say that 5 times. Like, give me tractors and overalls and fresh produce, relationship drama over tomato plants, and one confessional where someone says, like, I just don't think Kevin pulled his weight during cucumber season. Like, come on. Okay. This story is actually really sweet and has been getting a little bit of attention because it centers around a married couple known online as the Gardening Gays, and what started as two people sharing their lives, their gardening journey, and farm content has unexpectedly become something much bigger. And this story is so much deeper, which I will probably, do my little download at the end of relaying the story to you. But if you grew up with stereotypes around what rural America is supposed to look like, and let's be honest, most of us probably have those stereotypes in our mind, this story kind of flips that and some of those ideas upside down, because we tend to picture these very specific images, right? Huge farmland, tractors, small towns, conservative communities, pickup trucks, and probably somebody named Randy who's missing some teeth, who grills every weekend and somehow owns 17 baseball caps and hasn't showered in a while. Like, sorry, Randy, if you're out there. And if we're being really honest, I think a lot of queer people have grown up with this idea that if you're queer, your happy ending eventually means moving to a giant city somewhere, right? Like, not to rural America. Like, the storyline has always been leave your hometown, move to LA, move to New York, move to San Fran, find your people, build your life there. And for a lot of people, that journey is absolutely true, myself included. But this story feels a little bit different. The Gardening Gays built their lives and their business in rural Virginia, and instead of trying to fit into expectations of what people thought their lives should look like, they simply started living their lives authentically. They began sharing content around gardening, farm life, and the day-to-day reality of what they were building together. Seems pretty simple, right? Straightforward, but this is where things get interesting, because this wasn't some like giant campaign where they showed up saying like, we are here to change minds. Like, they weren't standing in a field giving inspirational speeches with dramatic orchestral music playing behind them, right? They were simply, literally growing food. They were sharing life updates, They were posting about farming, and over time, something started happening. People connected with them. Neighbors connected with them, communities connected with them, followers connected with them. Because apparently, when you strip away assumptions and labels and politics and arguments and internet comment sections, which honestly feel like they should be studied by psychologists at this point, people start seeing actual, real fucking human beings. And what I love about this and about their story was hearing about the support they began receiving within their local community, close to home. Their farm continued growing, opportunities started opening up, and they became visible examples of something that people don't often get to see. And people don't get to see it because, like, representation is weird like that, right? We think gays are doing one thing and should only do one thing. Meanwhile, we've got some gay farmers out here. Like, sometimes we think representation only means celebrities or politicians or giant magazine covers and like red carpets. Like, we think it has to be like a massive thing in order to represent us. But sometimes that representation just looks like two guys standing in a field talking about tomatoes and doing whatever it is they want to do. Like, which I just think that's all kind of iconic. I love it. Visibility doesn't always happen in like giant movements or like, representing the entire community. Sometimes it's like a quiet little thing. Someone might drive past the farm and like see this couple working together. Someone follows an account online because they like gardening tips. And then they realize, like, oh, they're married. These are some gays. And then suddenly a person that they've never met before doesn't seem so unfamiliar, and a way of life that they've never experienced before doesn't seem so unfamiliar. And I also think it's kind of funny because I imagine somebody like originally following them thinking like, I'm here exclusively for zucchini content, okay? And then 6 months later, they're emotionally invested in these people's lives and they care about them. They're like into it, and maybe they didn't realize they were gay, and then they learn, oh, they're gay. They're just like everybody else. Like, these are regular fucking human beings. Like, imagine opening Instagram and being like, I came for the cucumbers and somehow now I would die for these men. I think it's a pretty dope way for us to communicate to people that don't have other gay people or queer people, trans people, bi people in their near vicinity, right? Relating to them using things that they might be passionate about, if that makes any fucking sense at all. And another thing that I really love about this is that they weren't trying to become symbols or spokespeople like for the community. They were just building a life together and like sharing it, recording it, taking pictures, right? And there's something very refreshing about that because sometimes LGBTQ stories in the media, they're just very heavy because of the way the world is currently. Sometimes they're centered around struggle or conflict or hardship. And like, well, those stories are so important. You know how I feel about them. I'm talking about them all the time. I think there's also something really beautiful about stories where people are just existing, they are thriving, they are doing their life, and they just happen to be a part of the community. Like, that's it. There's no giant battle scene. There's nobody picketing at their farm, as far as I'm aware. There's no dramatic movie ending here. No one standing in the rain screaming those emotional monologues, right? It's just normal, everyday, two gays on a farm, just two people creating a life that they love. There's also the part about people scrolling through Instagram or social media, wherever they're finding the gardening gays, and accidentally getting exposed to that joy. Like, social media is chaos. It's like dark. It's tough sometimes. Like, somebody's getting canceled here, somebody's fighting there. There's another disaster. And then randomly you're like, oh, two men smiling beside vegetables that they grew together. I mean, I guess I did say they might not know that they're gay, but their names are the gardening gays. But like, you never know. People look past the handle sometimes. Like, give me that energy. Like, give me a little bit of positivity here because there's a lot of heaviness, peeps. Give me carrots and happiness. Give me tomatoes and emotional stability. Give me gay farm content in a wholesome, like, family rated way. Because, like, I genuinely think the world needs more stories like this, okay? And also, not to make assumptions, but I know for a fact those vegetables are probably thriving. I don't have any evidence for that. I just feel like anyone that is capable of producing incredibly organized, beautiful, aesthetically pleasing produce, it's two gays on a farm. And one of the hard parts about this, we're staying positive, but I feel like this this is the way my brain works. I go, maybe these people are just accepted because it's a little bit more status quo. It's a little bit more heterosexual to be a farmer, right? Or we look at it that way. But I always say being gay is not being masculine or feminine, that wide, broad spectrum. Like, there are gays that play hockey. There are gays that are lumberjacks. There are gays that are jocks. There are gays that are artistic podcasters like me. There are gays that are drag queens. There are gays that are doctors. There are gays that are makeup artists. Like, there is such a wide spectrum. And I think when the world and the country begins to open up its eyes and realize that, straight men can also do anything as well. Like, we try to keep these straight men so fucking masculine. That's why they're so repressed and insane sometimes. And currently running the government. Don't get me going there. Happy gay news, good gay news today. But it might, pinch a nerve or touch a nerve or hit a nerve for some people listening, because you're like, well, no shit, people are accepting them in rural America because they're fucking farmers. They're not opening like a drag bar in rural America. And you may be right, but this is a wonderful example of two people from the queer community doing what they love. They should not feel alienated by us either, being like they're not gay enough or whatever. It's just a really good example of let people do what they want to do. Let people explore their own hobbies. It doesn't matter if you think those hobbies are masculine or feminine. Everyone could be gay and everyone could be straight. It doesn't matter how you walk, how you talk, how you dress. What you like is what you like, honey. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, and we're going to move on to our next story, and we're going to go back over the pond. We're going to go to Spain because they recently made an announcement that caught a lot of attention internationally. Spain officially created its first global LGBTQ rights envoy position. And if you're sitting there thinking like, okay, wait, what exactly is an LGBTQ plus envoy? Well, don't worry, because I had the exact same thought and question for approximately 5 seconds before I immediately imagined someone in a fabulous suit carrying a briefcase filled with rainbow diplomacies and glitter and just like bebopping around the world on a PJ. But reality is actually quite interesting. That's not what an envoy is, okay? The new position is essentially focused on representing and advocating for LGBTQ plus rights internationally as part of Spain's foreign policy efforts. Instead of only focusing on issues within its own borders, Spain is creating a role designed to engage with global conversations around equality, human rights, discrimination, and protections for LGBTQ plus communities around the world. Can you imagine if our government did that? Why don't we have that? We need that. I'm going to do it. It's me, okay? I'm going to call Trump right now. I'm sure he would love that. So, to understand why this is getting attention, you have to understand Spain's own journey over the last couple of decades, because Spain has become one of the most progressive countries globally when it comes to LGBTQ plus rights, but that was not always the case. Spain legalized same-sex marriage back in 2005, becoming one of the first countries in the world to do so. And again, that's not that long ago. At the time, it was considered a major shift and a major political movement because globally, there were still many countries debating whether marriage equality should even exist. And by many, I mean a lot of them. Since then, Spain has continued passing legislation and policies expanding rights and protections, including measures involving gender identity and anti-discrimination efforts. So go Spain, I'm here for you. So now, Spain appears to be taking another step, but this one is different because it moves beyond internal policy and starts looking outward. The idea behind an envoy position is not necessarily to function like one person flying around the world with a rainbow cape, solving every problem overnight like I thought it meant. It is more about representation, international partnerships, conversations with governments, and making LGBTQ plus rights part of broader discussions around human rights and diplomacy. Again, I'm here for it. Because when people hear foreign policy, I think that most of us imagine like very serious rooms with long tables and tiny microphones, water glasses that no one's drinking out of, and people discussing economics, security issues, wars for 6 hours while everyone tries not to fall asleep, right? We've seen it in movies. Like, how else would we know? But human rights have increasingly become a part of those conversations too. So issues involving equality, discrimination, freedom, and legal protections are often discussed internationally because they affect real people and real communities. Countries regularly cooperate on topics involving education, public health, labor rights, humanitarian issues, and social protections. And sometimes LGBTQ plus rights have become part of those broader conversations in many places. Certainly not enough places, but sounds better than none. And what makes this story interesting is that this isn't simply like Spain making a statement for itself. The creation of the role suggests a willingness to publicly position LGBTQ plus equality as something worth actively discussing internationally. Can you imagine if every country did this and then we had the world like association of LGBTQ plus envoys from every country, like domination, okay? And globally, experiences for LGBTQ plus individuals, they vary dramatically depending on where somebody lives, right? In some countries, marriage equality exists. In others, there are legal protections in employment and housing. Some do not. In some places, there are growing levels of social acceptance and visibility. And some places, you can be put to death for being gay. So, sounds terrible. People face restrictions and legal challenges in a lot of countries just for being part of the community. So, this new envoy role enters a very complicated international landscape. The position can involve meeting with organizations, participating in international discussions, helping coordinate policies, and maintaining dialogue around queer rights and queer issues. It becomes part diplomacy, part advocacy, and part relationship building. And honestly, relationship building might be one of the biggest parts of it because international change rarely happens overnight. Most major and important changes happen gradually through conversations and partnership and continued pressure over time. And I also love the mental image that this creates, like the little global LGBTQ plus rights envoy. The global queer rights envoy sounds like so important. It sounds like a position straight out of a political drama series. Another one right to Netflix. Like that would be such a dope show. Like imagine introducing yourself at a dinner party, right? I'm like, hey, I'm Josh. Like, oh, okay. What do you do? I'm a global envoy. They'd be like, what? Excuse me? Global envoy? Pardon-moi? And, like, suddenly everyone else at the table sounds boring, right? You're like, "Oh, cool, Ted, you work in accounting. I am an LGBTQ plus global envoy, honey." Maybe I'll add that to my manifestation list. Meanwhile, that envoy, right? It's like you report directly to the Avengers. I'm so here for it. But okay, joking aside, the creation of positions like this reflects something that is larger that is happening globally, which is the recognition that LGBTQ plus issues are increasingly being viewed through broader human rights conversations rather than isolated domestic issues. And what I thought was interesting reading about this story was that it wasn't framed as a reaction to like a single event or controversy that happened. It was positioned more as an effort to establish a long term role and a continued commitment to international engagement. It's not like some wild event happened and they were like, we need this. This is almost like preemptive, right? Because sometimes the biggest stories like are not, again, the loudest stories. Sometimes they are administrative announcements because they want to be ahead of the game, on the ball. Things that initially sound small until you realize those structures often create this very long-term impact over time. Like once something exists institutionally, it creates opportunities for future conversations, future partnerships, and future work that can continue beyond a single news cycle. So, while this may not have come with fireworks or giant celebrations in the streets, it definitely became one of those stories that made people stop and go like, "Wait, that's actually really interesting," including myself. I was like, "Huh, why don't we have this? I don't think we have it. If we did, fucking Trump canceled it." But I think that's exactly why it earned a place on today's Good Gay News roundup. Like, this is so cool. And I am submitting my hat in the ring for, well, I guess I'm a Canadian citizen, but maybe America, Canada or America. I will represent North America as the global gay envoy of North America. Perfect. Count me in. All right, now for our final story. We are entering the world of fashion, runways, cameras, couture, and people wearing outfits that somehow cost more than a car while simultaneously looking like they were inspired by a curtain and 3 safety pins. Weird things happen in fashion. We're talking about supermodel Alex Consani and you know, I love to say my A is funny, so I might be saying her name wrong, who recently made history by becoming the first openly trans woman selected to serve on a major host committee for the Met Gala. And I know there's a lot of controversy about the Met Gala. Like, it costs a lot to be there, you know, depending on where you fall in the scheme of politics. Like, a lot of people were giving it a little boycott. A lot of people were like, $100,000 for a ticket. Imagine what that money could do when, you know, we're fighting wars and we have all this crazy stuff happening. But again, this is good gay news, okay? So we're looking at the bright side. So now, for anyone who doesn't spend time obsessing over celebrity culture, fashion culture, or looking at Met Gala photos and pretending that you understand what is happening, let me quickly explain why this matters, because the Met Gala isn't just some celebrity party where people put on expensive clothes and walk around taking pictures, okay? On its face, it is. I mean, technically, that is what it is. It is that too. But it is also the biggest fashion event in the world. The event raises money for the Costume Institute at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and every year attracts major designers, celebrities, musicians, actors, athletes, and influential figures from across entertainment and culture. Beyond the outfits and the headlines, the guest list itself has always been a huge conversation because invitations often reflect who is considered culturally influential in that moment. And I'm pretty sure tickets cost $100,000. Like, who gets invited matters. Who gets photographed matters. Who gets placed at the table matters. And increasingly, who helps shape and host the event matters too. So Alex Consani has been building a major presence in the fashion world over the past several years and has become one of the most recognizable faces among a new generation of models. Beyond runway appearances and fashion campaigns, she's also built a huge audience online through social media where a lot of people first discovered her personality. Because here's the thing that's interesting about Alex's rise. She didn't just appear out of nowhere as this polished fashion industry figure. People connected with her because of her humor, her personality, and authenticity long before many people knew her primarily as a high fashion model. She developed a following online where people loved her chaotic humor, her self-awareness, her ability to make fun of herself. Then, alongside that online growth came increasing visibility in fashion spaces, campaigns, and major runway opportunities. And of course, eventually those worlds started colliding. And years ago, fashion conversations around trans representation often focused on whether trans models would even be included in major campaigns or runway shows at all. The discussion was usually centered around visibility and access. Would there be representation? Would there be opportunities? Would there be space at the table? And stories like this suggest a different kind of shift happening, because this isn't simply about appearing in front of the camera. This is about participating in leadership spaces and becoming part of the people helping shape major cultural moments. And there is a difference between being invited into a room and then helping host the room. Like, that matters. When you're the architect as opposed to just an attendee, it makes a difference. Like, fashion has always had a long connection with the queer community. Queer people have influenced fashion trends, styling, design, beauty, culture, photography, performance, and art of all kinds for like decades, forever. Many creative spaces have been shaped heavily by queer voices and talent, but historically, that influence didn't always translate into equal visibility or opportunities, especially for the trans community. Sometimes communities create culture while receiving little recognition for creating it. Sometimes they influence spaces without fully participating in positions of power within those spaces, and sometimes they're not acknowledged for it at all. So stories like Alex's become interesting because they represent changing dynamics. Alex herself has become known for feeling refreshingly human with an industry that can sometimes feel very intimidating from the outside. Fashion can often seem so very serious. Like, everyone looks mysterious, everyone looks expensive, everyone looks like they know something that you do not know and you may never know. Like, you look at runway photos and think, like, am I supposed to understand this? Like, sometimes it goes over your head. Is it art? Is this fashion? Is this person okay? Meanwhile, Alex built a lot of her audience through humor and relatability, which made people feel connected to her before they were even paying attention to the fashion side of her career. And again, it's similar to the farmers, right? We got into them. People became intrigued or interested because of their personality before it was like they're gay or they are trans. Like, I think that's actually part of what makes this story resonate with people, because audiences increasingly seem drawn towards personalities, no duh, who feel authentic rather than untouchable and unrelatable. Like, people want talent, obviously, but people also want personality and to feel like they too can sit there and laugh with you, whether it was online or in person. Like, they want humor. They want someone who feels like a real person. And as her career continued growing, major opportunities continued arriving alongside it. Runway appearances, fashion campaigns, industry recognition, and now this historic role connected to one of fashion's biggest events. I also just love imagining some younger kids somewhere seeing headlines like this and realizing that possibilities continue expanding in spaces where they may not have imagined themselves before. Like, seeing a trans person in fashion this big is pretty huge. Like, representation often works behind the scenes in those quiet ways. I always say this is the reason I started the podcast, because maybe there's some 13-year-old kid out there that was like me that is like listening and like, oh, there's hope, right? Like, sometimes nobody announces it again with those giant flashing lights. Sometimes somebody sees something that is very simple. It's a headline and they just think like, wow, I didn't know that could happen, but now I know and it can happen to me, right? And then suddenly a possibility exists that maybe there wasn't one there before. And I do want to acknowledge one thing. Fashion people have to stop acting like everyone knows what is happening at the Met Gala every year, because every year I open social media and suddenly someone is like wearing a giant crystal bird cage. I feel like the Met Gala keeps coming out of nowhere. Like, yeah, I used to know that it was coming and then all of a sudden it's here. Like, and people are dressed like wild. I love it, but it's like wild. And the comments are saying things like, this is brilliant commentary on modern isolation. Like, I need a press release of the theme beforehand so I can mentally prepare. Meanwhile, like, I'm thinking like, okay, but like, you clearly can't sit down or eat in that bird cage, right? These are the questions that I need answered personally. Okay, but joking aside, Alex Consani has made history by becoming one of these big headline stories that represent something larger happening across entertainment and media. Visibility, I hope, is evolving into participation, and participation is evolving into leadership, and leadership creates new opportunities for the people that are coming after. And honestly, that is some pretty damn good gay news, if you ask me. So, what did we learn today? Well, we learned that progress is happening in big ways and small ways all around the world. We saw Poland take an important step in recognizing same-sex marriage. We met 2 gay farmers, proving that authenticity and community can grow in places people may not expect. We saw Spain expand its commitment to LGBTQ plus advocacy into a global stage. And we watched Alex Consani continue breaking barriers in fashion and showing that representation isn't just about being invited into the room anymore. It is about helping shape the room. I think one of the biggest takeaways from today's episode is that good news doesn't always scream for attention. Sometimes progress is quiet. Sometimes it's paperwork getting signed, community showing support, people building lives together, or someone making history in spaces where they haven't always been seen before. Those little moments matter, even if they're not front page news. Those little moments matter because they remind us that while bad news moves fast, positive change is still happening too. So if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're following Hot Air on Instagram and TikTok at _hotairpod. Head over to hotairwithjoshuarobert.com, where you can shop my merch, submit your listener stories, and topic suggestions for future episodes. So thank you again for hanging out with me, taking a little break from the chaos to celebrate some good news. I'm definitely going to keep doing these. Like, it's heartwarming, isn't it? To understand that there's still great things happening in the world. And actually, it was quite refreshing for me as well. So shout out to the person who suggested that I do this, because it's been a while since I've done one. And we're going into Pride season. I think this is the last episode before June, Pride Month, which is also Nuclear Family Month in whatever state that is. But we're keeping it Pride Month here on the pod. So we're going to be bringing it back to all the Pride festivities, important guests that I have lined up that, I'm trying to lock them down. I keep saying I have guests. It's really hard to lock people down sometimes, but some influential people in the queer community. We just got to solidify a few more details. So send me your positive energy. that we can lock this in. I always say keep your fingers and toes and balls crossed. So keep your fingers, toes, and balls crossed for me that we're going to get these guests on to chit chat and also represent the community. And of course, we'll probably get into some more Pride history, queer history, things that I think are important to recognize in the month of June. And with that, let's get our rainbow flags. Get your short shorts, get your mesh tank tops. Don't know why I'm talking like that, but I will see you next Tuesday. HOTAIR, hot takes therapy, no filter. Say what I mean. HOTAIR, let's be real. You're listening to Hot Air.